podcast for all you hustlers and dreamers out there. Join us on this electrifying journey from side hustle to CEO, where you dish out insider secrets, success stories, and entrepreneurial wisdom that you need to conquer the business world. I'm Kieran. I'm the CEO of DNA Today and part of the iShook family, and I'm joined by my co-host Benny.
Hello. Welcome everybody to Midnight Market with Kira.
Woo!
I'm just here as a side sidekick of Kira.
Side
Yeah.
hustler turned CEO, everything, all the success.
Definitely.
But
trying.
I mean, I guess on this episode, I'm going to treat you more like a guest because I want to learn a lot from you, along with our audience, about legally setting up your business. So this is kind of a topic that came up either last episode or 2 episodes ago, pretty recently, where there are different options. So setting up an LLC, an S Corp, and so figuring out, okay, well, what are the differences between those? When is each a match? And then talking about like the steps of like, how do you actually do that?
Definitely.
So as I said, Ben, you have a lot more experience in this. I only have one company. You have, I don't even know how many. So I want to kind of interview you about all this.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
I think my first question is just the main differences between the most common setups. Like the most common setup I think of is LLC. That's what I have.
Right.
It seems to be like the most straightforward. If you're just starting your first business, it's like a small business. This seems to be the best setup. But then there's also S Corp, C Corp. There's different things within those. So what are the main differences, I guess, between maybe an LLC and some of those other popular ones or common ones?
All right, you hear me, right? Good. So,
Yes.
so I would say, as follows. It really depends on what type of venture you're going for. That is the main thing. So most companies are open in Delaware. Like, let's make that clear. And by the way, I think we're gonna have this episode be like a membership only episode. Honestly,
Ooh, okay,
I think
interesting.
because there's a lot of detail here that is a lot of information,
Yes,
and it's already consulting level.
it is.
I think someone can pay a membership in iShook, and for now to get this type of video coming out.
Sure, because I already have so many just natural questions, let alone the questions that I've kind of thought about ahead of time.
Right. So
let's like back up. I
okay.
think
So
just a
first I
minute
have
with
to
the
create.
Delaware.
Right. So
part.
after first, let's set a disclaimer. Okay.
Okay.
Let's put a disclaimer here, guys. We're doing this on the whim. Disclaimer: we
What
are
is our
not
disclaimer?
here to provide financial
Yes.
advice.
This is all for learning purposes and
Please-
not here's what to do necessarily.
Please, right, contact an attorney. Here we go. Contact an attorney.
That knows your specific situation in terms of like,
Exactly.
if you're in the United States, what state, what is
Exactly.
that income level looking like? Are you married? Is there other sources of income? I don't know. Things off the top of my head, I think about in terms of what is your specific setup.
Right.
I mean,
and the
there's tax
license
reasons.
financial advisor.
Yes.
Man.
Yeah, there's a lot to be considered. It's like relatively, I think it's more easy to set up a business than a lot of people realize. And we kind of talked about that on the last episode. But to make sure that you're setting it up in the most efficient and best way, that there's more nuances to that. Like, yes, is it easy just to set up an LLC? Yeah, pretty much.
So
but
here, we're not here to
make sure
provide
it's good.
financial. I wrote financial wrong, but whatever. Change it now. We're not here to provide financial. All right, there we go. Here we go. Save. There we go. All right, when please contact an attorney, a CPA, licensed financial advisor. Let's let this run for a while. Yeah. So, all right. So yes, what you said is true. What you said is all right. Now, how would I advise a person to open an LLC? First of all, an LLC, C Corp is the way to go usually. That's how you start with. Okay.
Is that different from an LLC or is that within?
No, so you have a type of corporation, and then you have the meaning type of corporation means LLC, INC, PC, PLLC. These are all professional. PC
the letters
PLC.
After the name of the business.
Yeah, that's perfect. So LLC is limited liability corporation, INC is incorporation, PLLC is professional limited liability corporation, and you have PC, which is professional corporation. Right? Then you have probably more than that, but I don't
Hmm.
think they're relevant to us. You have a trust, you have a sole trust, and you have a corporate trust, meaning it's really more. You're not really in charge of that. You're the beneficiary, so to speak, but there's people on the board who make decisions.
Right.
But ultimately, you want to create an LLC if you're starting. You want to make. So let's go to the individual level. Every individual needs to have his own LLC.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons that that's advantageous.
Yes. So and it's very important that every single person has in their LLC, and they should have their LLC open in Delaware.
Okay, so why Delaware?
Delaware is the best corporate law is in Delaware when it comes to corporate veil,
What is
which
corporate veil?
which means if you commingle your personal funds with your corporate funds too many times, you will they can you can get sued and say no, your corporation is really you because of the commingling of funds too much. So if you go back and forth
Interesting.
in transfers, so you can become liable, you can lose the corporate protection. In
Wow.
Delaware, it's very hard to lose that corporate protection. You always protect it in the corporate level.
And if you don't live in Delaware, is statistically, most people watching, listening to this don't live in Delaware. So you're allowed to legally do that. Open your business in Delaware, even though you have no tie to that.
No, but you would be paying Delaware registrar fee, which basically means that your address will be in a person who is legally allowed to present addresses for corporations to their specific address. So you will pay that fee, like it costs a fee a year to do that. You understand?
Okay.
Yeah.
And
So
that's
that
relatively affordable for people that are just starting businesses?
yes, it's relatively affordable, right?
Okay.
I mean, we can
Interesting.
add these features on our iShook.me when you
Hmm.
sign up, and we can give you links and how to maybe through us probably potentially open these corporations. We could probably do that. We have a third party aggregator who does it
Nice.
for us. Maybe we'll do that on iShook.me. But ultimately, yes, you would open a Delaware LLC for yourself,
Where
and
you're the only person that is involved in that LLC in terms of owning it. There's a
you can
term
you
for
can do
that,
whatever
isn't
you
there?
want. You can do whatever you want with that LLC. That LLC can be
Mm.
eventually. You can add a spouse. You can add
Mhm.
children eventually to that LLC, and they can become the beneficiaries of that LLC in order to bypass any estate taxes if God forbid the person's demise comes early or
Sure.
late,
Yes.
right? But at the same time, that LLC's sole purpose is for what? For your services. Okay.
And to separate your business finances from your personal finances. So, like you said, if you do get sued, it's separate,
Yeah, so
which I know that's
every deal you would do will be through that LLC. Now, the bonus of that LLC is also in Delaware, you're paying less taxes than for sure New York, right?
hmm,
Texas, Wisconsin, and other states also have benefits in their corporate structure. But it happens to be Delaware is the one of the best. So Delaware, you're more likely to be you benefit in Delaware more than other places.
even though
There are
you're paying that fee at end of the
it's
year when you're
much
paying
less.
taxes, you're actually saving more money.
It's much less. You're not
Huh. I
paying.
will have to look into this for
Yeah,
myself because
I
I
mean, we
have
can we
my
can. I mean,
mhm,
if you Google right now each state and how much taxes you pay for per state and per federal is one thing, but per state you will see.
mhm.
I think Delaware for the state is 8%, where federal tax is still 21. If I'm not mistaken,
Wow, 8% is way less. I feel like I pay
for
so much
state.
more having my LLC set up in Connecticut for state tax, which makes sense. Connecticut is an expensive place to
Yeah, it is.
live, so
I
it
would
makes
I would
sense.
suggest to change it. I would suggest we
Yeah.
change it.
Well, I am certainly going to look into this, just like so many
Right,
other people on this.
right.
So, okay, so LLC, it's really advantageous
That's
for
for
all of
again.
these
That's for
reasons.
you. That's for you. That's for you.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yes, yes, for me. Um, you brought up an interesting point that I want to talk about a little bit before we talk about the different other types of business entities in terms of how you're legally setting that up. So you said something about separating your personal finances from your company finances so that you're not, if you get sued, there is a separation. Other than this aspect of setting up your business in Delaware to have that, is there other advice you have to keep that separate so that you don't get into really muddy waters?
Well, you can, and this is a little bit of advice, but you should again file the disclaimer in the bottom, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you would, when you file the LLC, you will want the LLC to be a Class C corporation,
Class C corporation. Okay.
which is an entity, which makes the LLC an entity different than you. If you do an S corporation in the tax world, it basically means sole proprietary. And what ends up happening is that whatever the LLC makes is, what's it called?
Like
Is
part of your taxes, your
it's you.
annual gross
It's
income. Yeah.
basically you. You
Yeah.
are the LLC then. You have the
Right.
protection, but we're talking about in the tax aspect, it
Mhm.
immediately funnels straight to you for taxes as income. Now, keep it as
Sure.
an C corporation. You will be, so this way you bypass the double tax. You pay only one tax, right? You pay the, not the corporate tax, you pay the personal tax. But if you're making potentially $1 million, you're paying the $1 million. What you want to do is you keep the LLC, which is all legal. You keep the LLC as a C corp. The money stays in the C corporation, and then you can define your salaries per year.
Hmm. So you can say, all right, my business is making 1 million. I'm gonna have my salary be 100K
Or
or
even
something like
less,
that,
or
or
less,
even less. Yeah.
whatever you want.
Right.
And the caveat is, most people don't know this, is that the corporation can pay your rent, the corporation can pay your expenses, the
Mm-hmm.
corporation can give you a food allowance. It's all called a stipend. And
Interesting.
it's deductible to the corporation, and it's not considered part of your income. It's basically paying straight to your expenses.
It's
And then
kind
you
of
put
like
yourself on net income of 24K, 30K, whatever you want.
right. So it's kind of like when people have a salary job, they work for a company, the company's like, hey, you're traveling, you have $100 a day to spend on
Exactly.
food or whatever, and this is how much we allow for a hotel, certain things like that. So that is
So
interesting.
essentially using the LLC to purchase and to pay for your daily life expenses, and that's part of your salary. So it's a deduction for the company, but it's not an income for you. And then you just write out your straight income, how much you want your income to be. You say, listen, I want 36,000 for the year. I'm good with 36, right? And then the corporation can also pay for your flights, the tickets for work, as long as it's work related, right? And you're good to go. And essentially everything could be
Yeah.
work related.
Yeah, that's the thing. It just seems like, I've had my business for a while now. When I started it, it wasn't a business; it was just a podcast. But
Sure.
um, something that I've learned along the road is that there are a lot of things that I'm like, okay, if I go out to dinner with someone that works for the podcast, that's a business dinner. So then I'm using my company card, which is just the LLC paying for it, but I own the LLC. So, it's all kind of like when you look at, how money's flying around, it's all my money, as I'm the only one that owns the LLC. However, there is that separation in terms, that's how I view it, but it's viewed differently in terms of what's allowed, tax incentives, like all of that. But I think it's been helpful for me to have, okay, this is something related to work. We're putting it on this credit card. If it's not related to work, it's going on my personal credit card. And I think for me, that's been helpful in my life just to keep things organized, because then when it comes to taxes, I'm like, wow, I could just look at my credit card statements and that's pretty much all. And I'm a spreadsheet person, but that really helps with understanding and keeping track of everything.
No doubt. No doubt. So that, again, an LLC will be the best bet for you personally. Now, how you're going to structure your corporation and your big venture, that's already a different ballgame.
Right.
And that you need really, you would then in that position use that LLC that you have to hold ownership of that new company you're doing a venture with.
Right. So it's kind of step two, like as my business
Yeah.
grows, of like, okay, at what point should we consider changing this? And that makes sense because my CPA that helps with my taxes every year has mentioned that. They're like, well, we're gonna keep touching base. And as your business grows, we may reevaluate what we're doing because there's reasons why once you're so big or your revenue is so much to revisit this. So I think it makes sense to
Yes.
revisit
Yes.
on maybe a yearly basis around tax season or something.
Right. So Elon Musk, in his situation where he wanted to get a $52 billion payout from Twitter, from not Twitter,
X.
from what was it called? From Tesla,
Tesla. Yeah.
right?
I was like, let me
Delaware,
just start listing all the companies he
right?
works for. We talk
So
about him a lot on this show,
yeah,
I'm
so
realizing.
because he's the richest man in the world.
Hmm.
So the reason, and he actually has actually the majority shareholding,
Okay.
right? He hold
For Tesla, you're saying.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
he wanted to get a payout, but the board stopped him. They went to court, and he lost in Delaware court. So he moved his corporation to Texas. And now the board wants to say, no, the Texas corporation has to go move back.
Oh my gosh.
So it's a whole craziness about where Delaware and other states and how they operate businesses. So corporations are not really licensed by the Fed. It's really a state by state, right?
That's what makes it messy and confusing.
It
I think,
makes it very
especially in
messy.
America, it's like, oh, there's
No,
50 states with different rules.
Yeah, but I think it's good. I think that's what
Yeah.
makes America very powerful.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of advantages. It's just a lot to learn, I think, from like for like a beginner entrepreneur. It's just like so much to learn. I mean, once you're at your level, it's like, oh, well, I've known this for years, and you kind of just keep up with things.
It's never easy. It's never easy because you always have to conform with new regulations, and not every time. And again, there's always a catch-22. There's always, oh, here you're good, here you're not good. It never really is what it is, you know?
And there's always something like some states won't have property tax, but then their income tax might be a lot more. Or like, you know, just because in one area there's like, oh, there's less taxes or no taxes on something. In other ways, they're getting you, you know, so it's all kind of relative. But I think that's what makes sense for if you're setting up your business. It's like, okay, well, where's the best state for you? And it seems like a lot of people, for them, Delaware makes a lot of sense. So I think that's interesting. So, I mean, to talk about this a little bit, what are the tax implications for each of the business structures we've talked about? I mean, for most people, as we said, they should be starting with that LLC. But what is maybe an example from yourself of when it made sense to escalate it from like the way that I have my business set up to the way you have your businesses set up now? Like, what was the transition, the trigger for that to happen?
Well, listen, you go to the supermarket, you want to save money, right? You're not going to go and spend more money on a banana because it looks the same. And you're not going to spend $5 on Tropicana banana to $3 of the same Tropicana banana, right? You're going to go get it for cheaper, right? Yes. So in the same time, you want to use, and I honestly, I believe this is just fact. Individuals have to learn to learn.
Mm-hmm. That's huge.
Yeah, and that's so important because you want to learn as much as possible in regards to law, legalities, and all that stuff. You want it. You don't want to play the game, right?
You don't want to just follow what someone's telling you to do. You want to understand, well, why am I doing this?
Exactly. And you want to be familiar with the tax law as much as possible. You want to know that there's deductions. Like we met a big CPA, right? Who used to be in Goldman Sachs. He used to be a Goldman Sachs person, and
oh wow,
and this was many years ago. And he mentioned that you have a certain tax deduction for R&D when you were doing a tech company. So if you're doing a tech company, where's the R&D, research and development? You have a specific 7% tax if you spend money on research and development. So there's an additional tax abatement or tax deduction that you can gain and credit. And that's what you should be doing. You should be doing those tax credits. And that's where everybody's failing. He said that's where they're doing.
Are there certain ones that have come up for you that you can think of that you don't mind sharing with our community in terms of like, oh, I learned about this? And some people call them like tax loopholes or things, but the things that are legal that you're like, oh, let's take advantage of this.
Well, the stipend is one of them.
The stipend. Yeah, that's a huge one.
And I'll keep that to that because that's the easiest one. It's the most secure advice you can get. Any other fancy advice is not for me because it's like me giving you advice on crypto trading. I can't really give you the advice on crypto trading because I am not there when you're trading. So I don't know what you're doing and how you're doing it for me to give you that advice.
Because it's so specific to
not
the
just
hour.
That, the knowledge that I know and what to do to pull out or to stay is instantaneous.
And it's what you're comfortable with in terms of risk. Everybody's different with that.
Exactly.
When you're younger, you should, in general, be taking more risk because you have decades to recoup that loss.
Right, but I heard that a lot with people's in TikTok and social media. Yeah, when you're younger, especially Gary Vee says it. Oh, when you're younger, you should take risks. You could take risks. 1 second. What do you mean taking risks? You need to be taking calculative risks.
Yes.
Not just taking a risk. I mean, what? You're gonna just shoot an arrow in the air and hopefully it gets to the bird you need to kill. I mean, for dinner tonight. I mean, for the non-vegans, throw the sickle and hopefully we, I don't know what
Yes.
they're doing, but whatever. Like, but the bottom line is that what are you doing? I mean, you have to have calculated risk. And I say the opposite. I say
Hmm.
to people's, learn how to learn,
Yes.
study well. And it doesn't necessarily mean in college. You have libraries that you can just walk in and just read.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily say you need to go to college, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have libraries. You have enough TED talks, enough videos on YouTube to learn.
Yeah.
You have plenty that you can do your weekly study of 20 hours a week, right?
Mm-hmm.
And start accumulating knowledge and verify all the knowledge you hear from people who are speaking. Read the books, see and those books, read the source points, and keep on reading more source points and more source points till you have a vast knowledge. And then when you have enough knowledge in the field you want to be in to take a risk, then take the risk.
Yes, I think that's really important to do your research
Yeah.
and be following whatever you're doing. Like I think for me, I for last I don't know how many years, but in my 20s started putting money into the stock market just like, S&P 500 account. And that is a calculated risk because I'm like on average it's what 7% to be conservative that we get returns on, just like a Fidelity Vanguard account
Right.
where you're investing basically in the top 500 companies. So to me, that's a calculated risk because I'm like, well, if the stock market goes down, it's like if I'm keeping my money in there for 30 years, it's never statistically gone down in 30 years. You will make a profit
Right.
if you're looking historical.
Right.
So
If
that
you
to me, that's a
diversify.
calculated. Yes. Yeah. If you put all your money into one company, whoo, gosh, that scares me.
Right.
But if it's like an S&P 500, it's like, okay, we've never had a loss in that amount of time, years, decades, all
Right.
that. So
You
that's
have
a calculated risk to me. But if I was 85, I say, well, I don't know if I want to put a ton of money into this because what if I need that money before I'm, 88 or something? And it's just a little bit different. But in your
right.
20s, 30s, early in
Because you
life, I
want
think
a
that's
person
different.
wants to die well, right?
Right.
He
Exactly.
doesn't
Leave
want to
things for
die
their
poor in a
kiddos.
hospice, in a
Yeah.
communal hospice. Yeah, no
Right.
doubt. I mean, the reality is that people's have to understand when you're investing in general, the investment has to be good for you, and you have to be
Hmm.
careful when you invest.
Yes.
Invest in what you know how to do. Don't invest what you don't know how to do. Now, and that's specific to even when you're younger. When you're younger, what do you know how to do? Honestly, what does an average person know with money and financing? What does
Not
he know?
much.
What does he or she know about the business world, right? What do you know how about economics work? Right now, the economic world is completely changing, especially with AI. Copywriters are going to be literally dead. But like we always said, even though the copywriters are going away, you still need copywriters.
Right. It just
Because
it
how
changes what
else
you're doing.
are you going to take the risk and letting AI do whatever it was? Maybe tomorrow you might be liable for an AI mess up because you're the one who made the prompt. Who
Yeah.
knows what the legalities are going to be with AI? And then we have other implications of AI that just recently I saw that AI, with the amount of AI that's being built, will be equal to building 40 million houses in America with regards to energy equivalency. So where's the carbon footprint there? I mean, New York is forcing
Interesting.
us to do no gas, all electric, right? And what's happening here? We have this new AI that's going to cost so much more when it comes to energy, and
Right.
we're abolishing coal and bringing solar. I mean, yeah, solar is good, but it's not that good in regards to energy. It's not as energy for sufficient as nuclear or coal. And today you have clean coal. You have clean energy coal that
Mhm.
can clean coal that's not effective to the environment. That's how good coal, I guess,
Mm.
filtration has been done.
Interesting.
Yeah, people should do a lot of research on that. And again, people are forgetting, for all those solar panels to be created and for all those wind farms to be created, you need coal power plants to make them for the
Hmm.
factories. So the coal is always needed. I mean, it's like how else are you making all this? People are not
Yeah.
getting it right. They're just losing themselves and understanding how things actually work. So that's the other point, is if you can't understand how to make your own life work, how are you going to make the world work? That's why I
Right.
kind of question these protesters and any type of subject they're protesting.
Mm.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I definitely have to learn a lot more about that area because I'm not as well versed. But I mean, I think a lot of entrepreneurs, when they're starting companies, some people have their own finances that they can say, I'm basically going to start this company with my own money and I'm like the sole owner and all that. Other people are not in that fortunate position to have that kind of money at their disposal. So how can a business structure affect an entrepreneur's ability to raise capital or attract
It definitely,
investors?
it could really affect them, me or her. I mean, it could affect anyone.
Mm-hmm.
What it will do is, listen. You need to be able to maneuver financing properly. It's like you're playing. You have to have the basketball IQ, the football IQ. That means just like you have an IQ when it comes to playing basketball, because there's a way to play basketball. There's a way to play football. If you understand the game, you'll be able to overcome and conform your abilities to that skill set that you need to beat others in the game. You not necessarily have to be the best player, but you could be the smartest player, and that's the
Mm.
reality. So what happens the same thing when it comes to financing. You need to learn how to become the best player. And the best player means what? Being straight, being accurate. But you could still utilize the government loopholes. And it's not government loopholes. People say, oh, it's a loophole.
Like as if it's a negative thing or something.
It's
It's like,
not a
it's
negative
legal.
thing.
If it's a loophole, it's legal.
Well, I don't like the
No.
word loophole. That's the thing. The reason why I don't
Yeah.
like the word loophole
It has a
is
negative connotation.
it does have a negative connotation. And
Yeah.
it's not negative because it's not necessarily a loophole. It's the law. I mean,
Right.
you want me to be punished for following the law or the rules, right?
We need a different word for it because it sounds like conniving. It sounds like icky. I feel like we need a different word for
Yeah, I would use the
loopholes,
word
but
undefined law.
okay.
I'm following a law that's undefined. That means it's not a
Hmm,
law. That means the law tells me don't do A, B, C, but it doesn't say I can't do G, F, and K,
right.
right? And that's what I'm going to do.
And how have you learned about these undefined laws and how to
So this is the
maximize your
story.
business?
Okay, so the story. So first online, and then we invested about almost $10,000 to go to a company called New Chip.
New Chip. Okay.
N-
I've heard you mention this before.
Yeah,
New
so New
Chip.
Chip was a company that helps entrepreneurs fundraise. Okay, thank you for helping us, teaching us. They say you have to go through this program. When you go through this program of education, you got to go through these 8 sessions of what's it called? And they're recording and they're recording and they're selling you books, they're sending you PDFs of certain things. And then guess what? New Chip files bankruptcy. A
Hmm,
company that's educating me how to be financially sound
that's
and
tough.
in order to get in front of VCs goes bankrupt. How do you explain that?
Yeah, not a
So
good PR moment.
not a good PR moment, and whatever. We were promised our money back guarantee if we were never introduced to any investors or VCs. So far, we have not, and it's in court. And maybe the courts will find our money. I mean, we're supposed to get the money back.
Yeah. So what have you learned, I
So
guess,
there
from
they
that?
taught you
Yeah.
about these LLCs. They tell you about Delaware.
Mhm.
They all mention Delaware is important. We have a Delaware. Our prime corporation is Delaware, the main corporation.
Yes. Which I've
And
seen for a lot of businesses. I work with a lot of businesses signing
yes,
a lot of contracts. Yeah, so this kind of explains. I'm like, why are they all Delaware? Because they're not physically in Delaware.
no,
So
because
always.
Delaware is the place to
Yeah.
be. You
So it's
need to
very
be in Delaware.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when it comes to like there is setting up your LLC, which maybe we should talk about, or setting up your business legally, and then maybe talking about just like ongoing maintenance and stuff. So when it comes to actually doing it, we've talked about okay, what is a good setup for which type of business entity. So let's say someone's going for an LLC, it's their first business. How do they even do this? Like, where do they start? As we talked about before, it's actually a pretty quick process. So, what does that process look like, and what's the timeline for it?
Again, which one? Which process?
Oh, sorry, setting up an LLC.
Well, if through us, we can get it done in max 48 hours. You'll get an
Quick,
LLC.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's not that much paperwork either. Like,
Well,
I thought it would be a ton, and then I was like, oh, it's actually
not to
pretty
open a
straightforward.
Delaware, not to open a Delaware LLC. In New York,
Mm,
it's a lot of paperwork because you have to do a
interesting. Okay,
in
yeah,
New
state by
York,
state.
You have to do a publication that your LLC is being opened. And
Okay, I
now
didn't know
there's a
that.
new law that's been now. It was enacted in 2021, and now it's actually been in full flux where it's being enforced, where you have to also disclose that you're the owner of the LLC.
I noticed that. I saw that somewhere, probably LinkedIn.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
now that's a new feature that you have to. So basically, they're doing a KYC, know your customer. The government, the federal government, wants to know each LLC, which the purpose of these corporations were really meant for no one to really know who you are.
Right. And isn't
Right.
that kind of dangerous in terms of, I mean, how much information has to be provided? Because
Full name and address,
name and your primary residence.
you personally. So the LLC.
Isn't that
So I tell you how you should do it, obviously. So you have the
okay?
personal
Yeah, that's
LLC. Okay, people
concerning.
can find you as a personal LLC, right? But
Right.
then what I would do is I would open another LLC that would be owned by your personal LLC.
It's like those little dolls where you have one doll inside another doll
Yeah,
inside
it's like
another
a shell
doll.
company. It's basically a shell company, which is not
Ah,
illegal to
okay.
have a shell company, and
Right.
have that corporation own 100% of the other corporation.
But then wouldn't you have to list that you're the owner of that second company,
No,
like that shell
because the
company?
registrar how will have to be the you would list that this corporation is the owner. I mean, but that again, you're probably right. It'll be probably registered, but you can have corporations register. You don't have to register yourself.
Because it seems dangerous from like a safety perspective of like
Whatever I
having your
said, you need
address
to,
out there.
yeah, yeah, that's for sure. But whatever I just said, you definitely need to talk to an accountant if it's even normal to
Yes.
do that. I mean, I don't
Right,
know
right,
how
right.
complex your projects are or whatever, because you do,
Everybody's different.
yeah, because real estate is much different, and you want to protect the properties and so on and so forth. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. No, so I think that's important. Once someone has their, let's say, LLC up and running, they're going, what do they need to be aware of in terms of what they have to do on a yearly basis? Or maybe you could take that in a different way. What do you have to do on a yearly basis for your companies? Like, obviously, file your taxes, but are there other things that you're like, oh, we need to make sure that this is updated? We're submitting this to the government, anything like that?
that I don't know because this is brand new for me. This
Sure.
reporting, yeah, the
This
reporting.
new.
You need to report it, and if you don't report it, you pay a $10,000 fine. It could be
Whew.
up to $10,000 fine.
So people definitely need to educate themselves
Oh
about
yeah,
that. Yes. I
oh
think
yeah,
that is really important. Um, and I mean, we've talked about just a lot of this in terms
right.
of looking at different setups for companies. What are the advantages, disadvantages? Are there certain tools or recommendations, like resources, that you think about in terms of maybe where you've learned a lot of this or where you kind of keep updated on these changes? Because it's a lot to keep up with. And as you said, learning about it is so important. Yes, you need to hire a CPA. That's one of the first people I hired because I was like, I do not want to mess any of this up. I want to do everything by the books. Are there other things that you recommend just to stay educated?
You got to read you just got to read the tax law a little bit. You know, not
Yeah.
fully. There's enough pamphlets to read. I would suggest you should write down oh, so now you have a lot of these platforms, which I
Hmm.
suggest to get, like either X0 with an X,
Okay.
QuickBooks, right?
Yes.
And there's a few other platforms that connect directly to your bank account
Hmm.
and kind of already set your banking properly.
Right.
And soon there's a few AI platforms, and there's going to be AI integration in the future.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, with accounting. So it'll make your bookkeeping much easier and much faster.
Yeah, because that aspect takes up a lot of time. Like
No
I'm
doubt.
keeping track of so much and I'm like, oh my
No
gosh,
about,
it's
and then don't
like,
forget, there's some
yeah,
people who do taxes every 2 years, every 3 years.
interesting.
Not
I didn't know
everybody
that.
does a tax that year.
Wow. Because a lot of things, like one thing that I learned pretty early on is like having an LLC for myself, paying quarterly taxes is what my personal CPA recommended because otherwise get hit with a fine if I only pay it once a year. So I
But
know for
why?
me, I'm like, oh, that's something
But
I don't
why? You're
know.
not paying any. You're not selling any goods. You're selling services.
Yes, that is correct. I mean, I'm selling digital goods, I guess. I don't know.
I don't
But
know.
yeah, more
Why
more
would you pay a
services,
quarterly
but
sales tax? Are you reselling something?
no.
So why are you paying quarterly
No, just
tax?
our income. I don't know. I know that I get hit with a fee if I pay it once a year,
I
but I
think
guess I'll
I
have
think
to.
I think just like people go to doctors, you should ask for a second opinion.
Yes, I think that is
No
also
offense
good
to your
advice.
CPA.
No, all good. We're not naming them, so it's all good.
Right,
Yes,
right.
all
No, you
good.
definitely should have a second opinion. Why? I
Yes,
don't
for
listen.
anything, right? Yeah.
Remember one thing: there's different levels of people in a field, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you have lawyers who know the law by heart, like like you have in the rabbinical sphere. People know the Talmud by heart, like word
Right.
for word.
And they know their type of law really well, personal
Yes.
injury
So
or
and they know the
IP law or
and they
like
know
whatever
the
it is.
exact and they know the most important case laws. Oh, the case from there and the case from there,
Yeah.
and they know all these cases by heart. You need the same thing with a CPA. I mean, honestly, I personally realized there's loyalty, but then there's loyalty. That
Mm.
means there's loyalty to your CPA, but then there's loyalty to myself, which comes first.
Always.
So myself comes first, and I realize that now. Like loyalty to myself is first, right? Again,
Mm-hmm.
without disrespecting someone else. Everyone
Oh.
be loyalty to themselves first. You
Mm-hmm.
get it? Like with me, I made it clear to my mind that listen, I do a lot of services with all the stuff I do, advice from life to business to venture capital or whatever it is. But I gotta focus on myself also. And
Right.
that means what? That means I can't always help your project succeed. I need
Mm-hmm.
to help my project succeed. So now for many years I helped everyone else succeed because of my job was to help others to succeed. But now my job is to help myself succeed, right? Because if I am not able to succeed myself financially, physically, mentally, family wise, health wise, all the wises, all the wises,
Yes, all the
right? If I'm not
wises.
able to do that, then forget it. So in that sense, I'm making my job to make myself financially sound. So now there are mistakes that you do. We make mistakes because you think that was the right move. You're somehow mesmerized by an individual,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, and then you lose with that individual because they giving you a potential. Oh, you're gonna have this, you're gonna have that, and in the end, you trust, and their trust is gone. And so now I used to always trust first, then give you a chance. If you mess up, I don't do it again. Now I
Right.
have to change my method a little bit. That you have to
Yeah.
earn the trust for me to do anything with you. I'll do a small project with you that doesn't exceed
Mm-hmm.
more than 5K, but I'm not gonna do no big project of 50 to 60 to 100 or 200 until
Right.
until there's some sort of proof that that small 5K project gives a success to me.
Right.
And that's very important. I think everybody should be doing that. Don't jump on bigger projects if you can't do the smaller project. Like if you have
Yeah.
a product that you want to push, right? I think each product should have its own LLC.
Hmm. Interesting.
That's what I personally think. Each movie you produce or each film you produce, for sure you have your own LLC, and I can tell you that's the advice I got from my attorneys. And then each property should have its own LLC. And then you should have a separate LLC that manages the
Each of
transactions,
those.
the sales of each product.
Hmm.
So if
Really like separate everything.
separate everything, oh, you
Hmm.
say, oh, you pay how much taxes, this, that, but you're not necessarily paying so much taxes because what you're doing is you're just using and I don't think you necessarily need to have a corporation with an EIN number because
Okay.
all the corporation is doing is holding the copyrights and
Hmm.
the rights to those products. And then what you do is you sign a license for your other LLC to resell those products. So
Ah.
if in any situation one product fails and it gets sued, you're not suing the salesperson, which is the sales LLC. You're suing that one company that
Just
is
that
hold
subset so
that
that if that
subset. If that
dissolves, it's
and then
okay.
have a liability. Now, with
Hmm.
that being said, each corporation, each product will have to have certain insurances, right?
Sure.
Some insurance would have to be put there. I'm sure you can create a blanketed insurance, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at that aspect, if one product fails, you don't lose the IP or you don't lose the resales of all the other products. And
Interesting.
this is being done also in real estate. What I just told you is being done in real estate. And I'm saying we should apply it to what do you call it? To
Like other types of businesses.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
That's interesting because it's like
Product
how
businesses. Yeah,
right. It's
I'm sure they
looking
do it.
at
By the way, I just made it up.
right, right. You're just like, "Oh, I'm realizing this."
Right.
But yeah, that's interesting because then you're really setting up a lot of separation and kind of safety within that if one aspect of a company really fails, goes under, whatever term you want to use, then it doesn't necessarily legally affect the others. Like if you are a company that has a bunch of different products and you had an issue with a product and you're getting sued, from what you're saying, I'd have to do more research, but it seems like then if that part goes under, then the rest of it can still be operating because legally they're separate
Yeah,
businesses.
not just that. They can't come after you for all your
Right.
products.
Right. You're like, okay, if you're suing us for product A, you can't be like, well, we want all of the finances surrounding products B, C, and D. You're like, nope, it's just A. So it
Right.
seems to be a lot of protection for the business. But then also, if you're setting this all up, the person that is owning and running this business is also separated. So lots of separation seems to be good kind of
Yeah, of course, a lot.
practice with insurance, kind of like giving yourself insurance in that way.
Yeah, you need to have some sort of insurance. Again, this how would that you talk to a person. I mean,
Sure.
but this is for sure done in the movie industry. Every movie
Hmm.
is a separate entity,
That makes sense because every film that is
has its
produced
own liabilities.
has so much liability because you put so much money into it and you don't know if it's going to flop or not. And
Not
movies have
Yeah,
huge budgets
right. And
most of
don't
the time.
forget, you have its own cast, its own crew, its own
Yep.
whatever it is, and you can't have one movie fail to domino effect all the other movies in liability,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Like if
So now
someone on set,
someone
you
on set
know,
falls, or like the right, if someone on set falls or someone on set that gets hurt,
and they
right, you sue
sue.
that movie. You're not
Hmm.
suing the whole parent
Right.
company, which is either Disney or Lionsgate or Paramount,
MGM or like any of
MGM.
those.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sure you're going to try to sue MGM and all these other companies.
Right. But it probably won't go that far,
It
kind of
won't go
thing.
that far, and
Yeah.
then
That's
the liability
interesting.
would be on that movie itself.
Yeah.
And then you have to understand, is it a movie that's made by MGM, and then what conditions did you sign? I mean, all these will
Hmm.
be take factors. I'm sure they have all these details, and
Yep.
all these big players are
And
protecting themselves.
lawyers, I'm
Yeah,
sure,
yeah. I
to
mean,
understand all of this and sift through and make sure all those like documents that are signed ahead of time are, thorough. And I think one thing that I'm thinking about in terms of what people should be aware of as they're setting up their companies is making sure that they're not spending all of their income because you need to keep in mind, well, how much are my taxes going to be? And making sure you have enough to pay those when that time comes. Because I've heard of companies that are kind of not really thinking that because they're so used to being an employee somewhere where those taxes are taken out before you even see your paycheck. So I
correct.
think that's a big thing that a lot of people I've heard just kind of like making that mistake of like, oh, right, I have to pay tens of thousands or whatever that is as a new business because, all right, you made so much money, but maybe you have a lot of expenses too. You should really be keeping in mind, well, how much are my taxes going to be? In general, can you give a range of what percent taxes that people need to pay? I think you mentioned like the federal. Obviously, state is going to differ so much. So
I mean,
just
we
talking
can we can
federal.
we can Google it. I mean,
Yeah, because I think it's helpful for people to know like what percent is that. If they sign a contract for a company for $10,000, how much should they be thinking about in terms of, oh, well, all right, we're bringing in this 10,000, but we can't be having expenses that are like 9,000 and then taxes on top of that. It's like you're actually losing money in the end,
so
which
let's
happens in
Google
the
it. I mean, let's
beginning.
Google it. We can
Yes.
Google it. I mean, let me first just Google it and then open the screen.
Right. Oh yeah, yeah. Sharing the screen. It's always a
All
good
right,
move.
corporate.
Um, and a lot of this we've just been talking about the US. I mean, I don't really know a lot about I don't know much in terms of the US. Obviously, as you guys can tell, I'm learning a lot the past few years. But yeah, I'm sure it's vastly different in other countries that might be tuning in. I mean, at this point, they may have tuned out because unless you're setting up a business in the US, I doubt this
Yeah,
conversation
no
is that
doubt.
helpful for you. But
For sure,
in
for
case we
sure.
have a straggler that's just like, hey, I like learning about this stuff.
Oh my God, I got you out. Where are you? Where are you,
Oh, it's
Kira?
okay. I'm still
Where
still
are you?
hanging in the
Okay.
background.
Yeah, no, you're here. So let's see how I share this screen. Let's share the screen on this beautiful
Yeah. See
platform we
how
have.
what
There we
percent people got
go.
to keep in mind for that federal plus your state.
So
So there's
state,
both.
corporate, income tax, and brackets 2024. And as
Yes.
you scroll down, here we go.
Every state is going to be different.
All right, so let me zoom in for the viewer.
Yeah, and
So
I'm just gonna
Alabama rates are, this is the rates as of January 2024. So you have over here the rates. You go from 6.5, 2.0 rates. If you can, and you see over here,
What's my Connecticut at? 7.5.
Delaware is
That's one of the higher ones.
8.7. Yeah, Florida's
Okay.
5.5. But what it was, this is the brackets, right?
Right. So
But I think
looking
this
at
is personal,
state
if
by
I'm not
state.
mistaken. I think this is personal.
Oh, not business.
Let me see.
necessarily.
No, corporate income tax
Oh,
rates.
there you go. Yeah.
So
I was gonna
so
say that
this,
seems a little low for personal.
yeah. So we'll drop this in the
Like the show
here. We
notes
can
for this
drop this
episode.
here.
Yeah.
We can drop this here. One second. Let's drop this link here, so our viewers can check it out.
Yeah, if you want to read through everything
And the
yourself.
disclaimer. Yeah. Here,
Control F to look at your specific state.
Yeah. So we have that there. Can we do a QR code for them? Add a QR code for our viewers as well.
It'd be very fancy if you're able to do that in the moment.
Yes, I can.
Wow. Oh yeah,
Tax.
I see it. It's going through the ticker tape. Is that what it's called at the bottom? Makes me feel like we're like a news show.
That's one way, and here's another way. Here's a tax bracket.
Wow,
right,
that's so cool.
You can QR the tax bracket link.
So you can
look
at everything on there.
So obviously here's Delaware. New York is 6.5 at 0%, $0, 7.25 when you pass 5 million. So it's a 1.25.
I see. It like separates into different. That makes sense. Yeah. Like, so what level are you at?
Right. So another 1.75. Okay. God bless New York.
Yeah.
So I think New
One
York
of the
has
higher ones on there. Right. Maryland's pretty high. Maine
is pretty high.
Yeah.
So already you don't want to be in those levels if your goal is to be a millionaire.
Right. Yep. Or you end up moving your business if you're starting to do that well, potentially.
That's true.
Yeah.
So and Delaware is pretty expensive. It's
I'm
0
surprised.
at 8.7% straight. I mean, Florida is 5.5%. In some ways, Florida is better.
Yeah, I was gonna say Connecticut for me is actually a little lower than Delaware, but there might be other factors I'm not taking into account.
Hawaii's 4.4%.
Wow, I'm surprised that's not higher because I was in Hawaii last year and everything is so expensive there. So
yeah,
I would say everything is double the price.
Right, Maine is 3.5 at 0, which is I think the lowest so far.
Yeah, that seems to be the lowest. North Carolina 2.5.
Oh, North Dakota is 1.41%.
Oh, there you go, even lower.
Look at that.
So do we
no wonder Kevin O'Leary is investing in North Dakota so much. Look at that.
You figured it out, Benny.
We figured it out. Look at that.
So interesting. So what about federal? Because that is going to apply to everybody.
Yeah. So let's Google a federal tax. And let's write corporate.
Right. Because this is, for me at least, I found
federal is 21%. It's 21%.
So does that, and I don't know if you're going to know the answer to this, but does that depend on how much you're making? Because it kind of depends on how much,
on net.
Right?
It depends on the net.
Right. Your adjusted gross income, AGI.
Right. So that definitely depends on the net.
If you make 10,000 versus 10 million, are you paying 21% for both of those situations?
No, you're going to be paying.
I was going to say it changes. Like what was something that was interesting that someone.
Well, look at this. The following states do not have a state corporate tax rate. How is that possible? We just read the corporate tax rate.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting because I know Nevada doesn't have state income tax, but I don't know if that's just personal.
Oh yeah, it says over here. It says 0.
Yeah, because I know that's
Ohio.
I have some friends that also moved out here. I live in Nevada right now, and yeah, that's kind of interesting that even my business is still set up in Connecticut. I haven't moved it, but there's a lot of incentives to do that. Yeah, I mean, Nevada's number one. I mean,
Texas,
I don't think
Texas is also big in operating corporations. 0 income tax.
Yeah, I feel like I see a lot of companies that have Texas as their.
So let's drop this also in our QR code.
Throw that in there for people that want to check that out.
Yeah.
And as you do that, I mean, we're kind of coming to the end of our chat today. Any other thoughts or anything that you're like, Kira didn't ask me about this and she really should have? Like any thoughts surrounding setting up your business legally and kind of, you know, what people should be considering? Anything around this? Anything that we've talked about today that you're like, oh my gosh, how have I not talked about this yet?
I mean, there's a lot
Or
to
I've done a
say.
good job as an interviewer and we've covered
No.
the
What I
basics.
would suggest is to the viewers, what they should do is drop a comment
Yes.
and ask any question they want on the show,
Yes.
and then we will answer
On an upcoming episode.
on the coming episode, or in the comments if it's an
Mhm.
immediate link or whatever, just to guide
Right. If it's
them.
kind of a straightforward answer
Yeah.
as opposed to like discussion based. Yeah.
That's what I would suggest, because it's really hard to give advice to something you don't know what you're advising for.
is.
You know, like I can give you what I do, but what I do is not what you're doing, and it might,
Right.
and it for sure it might not work. I mean, I hate giving advice of what I do to what you're doing.
Right. I think
Because
it offers another perspective, which is great. But even certain things that you do are not going to make sense for me. We're just different.
no
setups.
doubt. And I'll tell you something, in the game of life, no offense to people, some people play it better than others.
Sure.
Right. And just because you live in a lavish home in a mansion, it doesn't mean you did it better than me.
No.
Because if a person lives in a mansion, no kids, no family, who's gonna put them to bed and rest after 120, like we say? I don't think
Right.
you've survived, have done your job, honestly.
Or even like, I think there's this concept that I used to think, oh, someone's driving this really nice car. They have this huge house or whatever. Like, wow, they must have so much money. And then you realize like, no, actually they're broke and they're trying to finance this or that and stuff. So I think that's, I mean, kind of common sense, right? But I think when I was younger, I was like, oh, they must have money. And it's like, you know, I have more money than people might think because I drive a car that's 10 years old, but I'm like not a car person. So I'm not going to spend my money. If it's safe and reliable, that's all I need. So it's kind of looking at that too, and not being swept up in keeping up with the Joneses and everything.
Yeah, listen,
and doing what
luxury.
makes sense for you.
I-
Luxury for me
It's
is
ridiculous.
luxury is different for someone else.
Like they build all these huge yachts for these billionaires, right?
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
How will you resell that yacht? You need another billionaire to want to buy your yacht.
Right. So
How many billionaires are there? 500 billionaires,
Yeah.
1,000 max. Okay.
Yep.
So you only have 1,000 people that you potentially will buy your yacht or want to buy
Demand's
a yacht.
pretty low.
The demand is pretty low, and you just spend a couple of $100 million building your yacht. So I don't understand it. I mean, we have to live in the society of the group of people, right?
Mhm.
That you're the regular people, right?
Yeah.
But the regular people understand that the bling bling and the luxury is not necessarily beneficial in cost effectiveness. It could be worse. And coming back to Elon Musk again, he lives in a
Sure.
minimalistic lifestyle.
That's what I've heard. Yes.
Yeah, he does not live on these mansions. And by the way, a lot of the millionaires. Wow. Please forgive me, millionaires. I'm just kidding.
There was no subliminal messaging there. You truly had to cough.
No, I really had to cough because whatever. A lot of the millionaires are unloading their huge mansions and moving to condos and co-ops.
Yeah.
So you got to understand why. I mean,
upkeep alone like must be a lot, but it's
of course.
Yeah, you look at even just these fancy cars, and like certain cars will appreciate, but that is definitely
but for sure
the
cars,
exception.
right? But for sure cars today appreciate and depreciate at a lower rate than it used to be.
Sure.
Because
I noticed that when I was selling a car recently.
Right.
I was like, oh, wow. Like I bought it for a few thousand and it's almost worth that much after so many years.
Because car production is hard now to create cars.
Yeah. So like that has changed. I think in general, though, as soon as you drive a car off the lot, if it's a new car, it does depreciate.
Yeah.
So it's
not
as
big,
not as much as it used to.
It used to be you take it off the lot, it's already 8% less, 8 to 10%.
It's not
minimum.
as extreme now.
No,
yeah,
it's not, because hard to get them.
But this has been great. I think there's just so much for people to dive into and learn, and I think you've really given a lot of information for people to have a starting point to be like, oh, I kind of fear this concept. Let me learn a little bit more. Or now I have good questions to ask my CPA or other kinds of financial consultants because you're starting to understand some of this. And I think that's what's very valuable. I think, as we said, we're not here to provide financial advice, but more to get people's mindsets. Yeah. And like kind of navigate and be like, hey, we're talking about this. We hope that it will start you out on a thought process to then make a bunch of
Exactly.
questions for a
Exactly.
CPA and be like, hey, I heard Benny talking about something like this in this context. What makes sense for me? Like, does that make sense? Does it not? So
Right.
I
We're here
think
to
that's
give
what I'm hoping people
awareness,
get out of this. Yeah.
more of awareness for people's to
Right.
understand how to guide themselves and question
Yeah.
your CPA, question your
Always.
financial advisor, question your attorney.
Yeah.
Don't let them just tell you what to do. And I don't like when people just tell you what to do. Explain it.
No, explain it, and
Explain
also
why it is.
be like, responsive. I think some CPAs just like don't respond to you after like, and you're like, okay, are they prioritizing their clients that are bringing in a lot more money and maybe paying that
Of
CPA more,
course.
so it's like,
Of course, Kira.
you
Come on.
know,
And then
I know.
and they want to grow their company, but the problem is when you grow your
Sure.
company too big and you're the only person who knows everything, it's a problem. So
Yeah.
either you're training new people to know what you know, which is a catch 22. Most people don't want to do that, right?
Right.
So
It's a lot of work to train people.
that's why
So,
you have
yeah,
firms, and that's why you have corporate firms when it comes to attorneys,
definitely.
and you have partners, and you can make partner, and
Yeah.
there's an aspiration to be part of a business that already is
Mhm.
established. And there's the caveat. So that's where you also have firms when it comes to accounting, and
Yeah.
that's why they do that. In order to teach them to say, listen, we're teaching you to come on this firm.
Right. There's a lot of advantages to being a client of those types of setups.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but they're more expensive. That's the only difference.
Yep. So you get what
Yeah.
you pay for in a lot of areas of life. This is one of them.
No doubt, no doubt.
Yeah.
So we're good. I think we're
I
gonna
think
close
we're,
this. Peoples,
yeah.
don't forget to download ClickTalk
Yeah. Check
and
it out. QR
yes,
code is right
yeah,
here.
yeah.
It's called
We'll
ClickTaq.
say
That's over
yes.
there.
Yeah, let's just let the
Um,
peoples be able to
I was going to say, we got our ticker tape covering half of the QR code, which is no good
which is no
because
good at
you need
all.
that whole QR
And
code
now
to
I
work.
forgot how to get rid of those. I
I know.
got it.
I wish I could pull it up for you.
All right, there we go. Here we go.
There we
There
go.
we go. Oh,
Okay.
again
Oh, so
we'll
close.
click something
So
else. What do we
close.
click?
I don't
Oh,
know.
here.
There
There
we
we go.
go.
Okay, there. And then it's
So use
yeah,
that
there.
QR code for
Right here,
ClickTalk
guys.
to check that
All
out.
right.
Definitely. But Benny,
Awesome.
thank you so much for just having
Thank you,
this
Kira.
conversation with me and teaching me and our audience about some
That
things.
much appreciated. Don't
Yeah.
forget to subscribe to Midnight Market. We have our own YouTube channel for Midnight Market
Yeah.
besides the iShook Network channel. May
Yes.
everyone have a successful week.
Yes.